Ideas spread and dreams grow with words. Lifelong prison sentences are handed out in court over words. Genocides and racist wildfires scorching rational thought are spells of destruction cast with words. Music and thoughts of love become contagions with words. Words recall forgotten dreams and turn ordinary people into extraordinary legends. Words are how we learn the thoughts expressed by people who died a long time ago, etching them into the permanence of eternity. Words are the mortar that binds the bricks of your beliefs. Your thoughts are changing at the speed of neuron-mediated bioelectricity, but your spoken word burns into the memories of those who hear it as if your word is the only evidence of your thoughts. Blue Anarchy lives through the flexibility, elasticity, pliability of words and their meaning. It's like a love of language word game where words in context are jousting mediums and cleverness is the objective. Like an art of spoken technicality. All sorts of people in authority positions use semantic elasticity. They prey on the inherently ambiguous, descriptive properties of words. They stretch possibilities and interpretations with it. They can make perceived good become evil, justify greed as an excusable, natural impulse. They can turn ordinary reactions into psychiatric disorders. The LAD, language acquisition device, makes a very strong case that the brain is functionally predisposed to universal grammar, which is why children learn language at the incredible speed that they do. Like a processor on a computer circuit board, the LAD section of the brain will always allow the brain to identify universal linguistic properties no matter what language they're expressed in. That's why children categorically identify nouns, adjectives, and verbs without being taught the complex grammatical structures needed to know these things. It would also mean that every time we scrutinize the semantic value of words, it literally flexes the circuitry of your brain. Language is like a central nervous system brain sport. Understanding the mechanics of words is akin to understanding oneself. Because of its strict focus on words, language itself, and its semantics, Blue Anarchy is the embodiment of relativism and relativist philosophical worldviews. Let's mention what relativism isn't to prevent any prematurely expressed false assumptions or dastardly accusations. The primary virtue in Blue Anarchy is honoring logical consistency. You believe ideas can be put forth and expressed in propositions, and reasonable consequences can be obtained when logical rules are applied. As such, there's no room for racism, sexism, hedonism, hateful bigotry, or anything of the sort, because such concepts can only be birthed of ad hominems, red herrings, or other logical fallacies. Relativism is not the belief that objective values don't exist. That's leaning more towards nihilism. Instead, relativists believe objective values exist and properly express their beliefs anytime they use mathematical formulas or perform logical validity tests. Relativism isn't the idea that you walk around and do whatever you want to whoever you want because morality doesn't exist, so it doesn't matter anyways. It's definitely not that. That would be hedonism, a type of normative, egoistic worldview that maximizing one's own subjective pleasure is the primary moral consideration. Relativism and hedonism are not equivalents, even though a lot of egalitarians and libertarians portray relativism as such. Relativism is morally neutral because it merely describes through semantics. It doesn't prescribe ethical guidelines. So, in Blue Anarchy Chronicles 1, we broke the ice and covered grammar, semantics, syntax, and sentences. In Blue Anarchy Chronicles 2, we covered intension versus extension, also referred to as sense and reference, and we covered the main universal logical operators. In Blue Anarchy Chronicles 3, we will open up to vagueness. Most expressions in language are vague expressions. An expression is vague to the extent that it has borderline cases. So if I said something like long triangle, the word long is a vague expression because there's no definitive length when something stops being long and starts being short. But if I said something like isosceles triangle, the word isosceles is not a vague expression because it denotes a triangle that has two sides of equal length. So, words like soft, wide, dark, and sour have borderline cases. Their definitions aren't specific, but words like Radius, triangle, and zero have no borderline cases. Their definitions can only mean one thing. When the meaning of an expression has borderline cases, the expression is said to have soft boundaries. When the meaning of an expression has no borderline cases, it is said to have sharp boundaries. Vagueness happens anytime a given term has borderline cases. Some things might be kind of soft, kind of not soft. They might be a little sour, but not really sour. They could be a tiny bit wide, but not really wide. That's because of the soft boundaries of the words soft, wide, and sour. Contrarily, right angle has no soft boundaries because right angle always denotes a 90-degree angle. Hypotenuse has no soft boundaries. It is always the side of the right triangle opposite of the right angle. Right angle and hypotenuse have sharp boundaries. Vagueness also comes to light when a series of questioning, as illustrated in the Sorites paradox, is applied to a given term to highlight its vague properties. So, in the spirit of the original paradox, let's use Sorites questioning to highlight the vagueness of the word stomach. Stomach seems like a word that's not vague. It seems like a medical term that's very precise in its meaning. It seems hard to confuse a stomach for anything else. But suppose I'm with an ambitious mortuary science student who's studying the process of decomposition with anthropologists, and we have a donated human stomach laying on the ground outside in the wilderness, just waiting to fester. Let's say, for educational purposes, we make a HD movie of the stomach rotting through time, and the movie records at 75 frames per second. The first frame of the movie contains a clearly identifiable human stomach. The last frames clearly contain a fully decayed, scattered mess. The movie reel has days worth of footage, and the entire process of decomposition is captured. I remove the first frame of the decomposition movie reel and posit the question: is this recognizable as a stomach? Obviously, there isn't much change between the initial frame and the frame after it. The images of the stomachs in the frames are not identical, but their differences are seemingly negligible. I continue the Sorites questioning process. Imagine I remove a second frame from the decomposition movie, and again I ask, is this still a stomach in the frame? And again, it stands to reason that on a 75 frame per second movie, the removal of 2 frames is still negligible enough to reasonably identify the stomach. I remove a third frame and ask again. Then I remove a fourth, fifth, and 6th frame, and after the removal of each subsequent frame, I continue asking, is this still a stomach in the frame? And I do that forever. So, I keep asking the question, and after long enough time, I'll get to a point where that question can't be answered with certainty. Somewhere along the line, the picture in the frame will resemble more of a rotten mess than a clearly identifiable stomach. This method of questioning is called Sorites questioning. It's an incremental questioning process which elucidates the properties of vagueness, or lack thereof, in the definition of a particular word or term. If the definition of a particular word starts getting indiscernibly blurry under incremental Sorites questioning, the word is said to be vague. If the definition withstands Sorites questioning, the word is not vague. When applied to the word stomach, Sorites questioning seems to suggest that if a stomach has an exact definition, there will be some point in the decomposition movie where there's an image of a stomach in one frame, followed by an image of something that's not a stomach in the frame right after. Otherwise, we have to accept that the definition of stomach, something we thought was a specific word, is in fact a vague identity with vague properties. Not every word is susceptible to this little by little incremental questioning process, but most words that we use are. Beach, sky, table, car. These are seemingly obvious things in our lives, yet their definitions are all susceptible to Sorites decomposition through incremental questioning. That's not something that sits terribly well with people, especially lawmakers who pay attention to definitions in great detail. Vagueness literally calls every law into question. Considering traditional modus ponens style logic, if P then Q, P therefore Q, it would stand to reason that if you can infer the identity of a stomach after the first few frames, then the final frame should contain a stomach stomach and not compost. A paradoxical, absurd conclusion. Sorites Vagueness is a suspiciously dismissed subject matter. How can anyone say to themselves, "Most words don't have clear definitions. Oh well, off I go to work all my time away." How can anyone say to themselves, "I always use words that are mostly undefined," and have that sentence sit well with them? Some people don't believe true vagueness exists and offer rebuttals. But perhaps rampant indiscernibility surfaces in language because it reflects something real about the universe we live in. Perhaps the universe is rife with vagueness, and vagueness in language must exist in order to reflect universal truth. Perhaps vagueness in language reflects vagueness in the universe, and that has a tremendous implication for morality, knowledge, laws, and more. Dismissing Sorites decomposition as a nonsensical topic is intellectual cowardice. The laws flexed over you and enforced by police are written by lawyers with vagueness kept in mind. Computer programmers develop coding language bearing vagueness in mind. Vagueness literally plays a role every time your mind uses your body's senses to perceive the world. It's time to stop pretending that the web of vagueness isn't as prevalent as it is. Let's keep talking about the truth. We are shrouded by wordplay and vagueness, and this turns our minds into paragons of skepticism. More to come.